Today's podcast is brought to you by Bandzoogle. Bandzoogle makes it easy to build a stunning website for your music in minutes. Choose from hundreds of mobile-friendly themes, then customize your design and content in a few clicks with their super easy-to-use visual editor. All the features you need for a professional website are already built right in, including tools to sell your music and merch commission-free. They don't take a penny right on your website. Mailing list tools to grow your fan list and send newsletters. Integrations to pull in all content from all of your online services, your socials, SoundCloud, etc. And live support from their musician-friendly team 7 days a week. And they are really good at getting back fast and solving problems. So give that a try. Bandzoogle plans start at just $8.29 a month, and that includes your own free custom domain name. So go to bandzoogle.com to try it free for 30 days, and be sure to use the promo code TMTS. We got you guys 15% off your first year of subscription. That's promo code TMTS, and welcome to episode 43 of the Musicians Talk Show podcast. I'm one of your two hosts, Dallas DeWhite.
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Matt.
And we have a really fun episode for you guys today. It's packed full of a ton of information. I personally got a lot out of it.
Definitely.
We're talking to Kevin Breuner. He's the vice president of marketing at CD Baby, one of the biggest music companies in the world.
Yeah. And he had lots and lots of in-depth information for you. So,
I mean, if you want to know anything about music business and marketing, this is the guy you want to hear it from.
Definitely.
So we ask him all sorts of questions like that. And I mean, there's so much here to learn, even if you think you know it all like me. So let's get right to it. Matt, you ready?
No.
Okay, well, we'll wait a minute.
All right, now I'm ready.
All right, let's do it. So, Kevin, the first thing I wanted to ask you, which is the first thing I ask every guest on this show, is how'd you get started in music?
Well, I took piano lessons when I was elementary school age for like 8 years. And at one point took a little after school guitar lesson, like I think when I was in the 4th grade. But then when I started going into high school, I was more into sports. But then randomly, when I was 16, I found that guitar that I had taken those elementary school after school group guitar lessons with, and just picked it up and started playing again, and then got hooked and ended up going to college for music at Belmont University, music and music business, and majored in guitar with an emphasis in music business. And then it all kind of just started from there.
That's awesome.
So it seemed like kind of early on, you kind of knew you wanted to learn a lot about the music business. Why was that? That's not common, I don't think.
I don't know. It's just something I've been intrigued with, the business side of it. I've always found it fascinating. I grew up in San Diego, and so we were always in the shadow of LA, and just that was, I'm in my early 40s, and that was when the Sunset Strip scene and all the big rock bands, you went to LA to make it. And so there was just this mystique about the business and the idea of the hit machine and all that kind of stuff. And so I was always curious about it. And the reason I chose Belmont is because at the time it was one of the few schools that actually had a music business program. And I knew I wanted to know about the business, and also it's in a music business town. And so, I don't know. I was just naturally curious and wanted to know. I just find the business side of it fascinating.
That's awesome. So another thing we love to ask guests is, and it ranges on who has been to music school and who hasn't, but what do you think going to music school gave you over potentially not going?
Well, especially in Nashville, you're with so many people that are extremely talented, and most of them are far more talented than you are. As far as like when I went to college, I was at the bottom, probably the bottom third, maybe the bottom fourth, maybe even lower of talent in the program. There was just so many talented people. It really opened your eyes to the level it takes in order to make it. And it also opened your eyes to some other things that are needed to make it. I would say I was in the bottom tier of talent in my class and just at the school, but I saw so many amazing musicians, people that just were exploding with talent, that just weren't interested in putting in the work. They wanted to start at the top. Or they just, they just weren't interested in working, or found out that the way the business works isn't what they wanted. And by that, especially a town like Nashville where I was, a lot of people want to go and they just want to be session musicians. They just want to play on albums all day. And, you know, that's cool. And that's a worthy goal, but there's typically a path that it takes to get there. And a lot of those guys don't want to go on the road. They don't want to tour. They don't want to play shows. And so I saw lots of people that with lots of talent just give up. And people like myself that stuck around and just worked hard and looked for opportunity and put myself out there. A lot of artists also I found just weren't interested in putting themselves out there and taking a risk and potentially facing rejection. I put myself in situations looking back that it was ridiculous to think that I could handle. You know, it's just like I was willing to put myself out there and face the rejection and learn from it and surround myself with people that were better than I was so I could learn from them and grow. And so that really is extremely, extremely helpful to see. The other thing that I learned, you know, going to like a music school is when you're around that many musicians and people looking for players and people, you know, have projects, school projects or have bands and all this kind of stuff, is you learn that outside of hard work, you know, and talent, the other thing is you got to be somebody that people want to hang out with. And if you're not a good hang, then people aren't gonna, you know, want to have you in their band or have you playing for them. You might be able to get, you know, the gig playing on a record where you just show up, you play the part and you leave. But as far as like, if you're a collaborator or somebody that's going to be on the road with a group of people, if they have two options and one person's slightly better than the other, they're going to go with the person that they can hang out with on the road.
Definitely.
And deal with that. So
we've talked about that before. That's such an important thing, to be good and also be a good person and personality. Yeah. So
it's something
going to a music school. The last thing I was going to say is going to a music school in Nashville. There were so many people that were from a small town or, they weren't from a big city, and maybe they were the best singer or guitar player in their small town. And everybody thought they were amazing. And then when they got to Nashville and just saw the talent pool, it was intimidating. And a lot of people would just go back home.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something that's come up again and again on this show is being good is kind of the baseline. Everybody has to be good to get started. You can't just be good. You know, you need a lot of other stuff to make it work.
Yeah.
So after all that, what led you to CD Baby?
Well, while I was in college, one of my roommates introduced me to these guys that were looking for a guitar player. And it was the situation where the guitar player they had filling in, they really, really weren't getting along with. And so I stepped in, and then, the band was Small Town Poets. It was forming, and we ended up being signed by the end of that summer and had some success, sold a lot of albums, nominated for a Grammy and lots of other type of accolades, and had really some number one songs. But that was the mid to late 90s. And it was a situation where we were broke. We were the last to get paid. We didn't own the rights to our music. There was lots of people who had their hands in decisions and creative decisions that at the end of the day would, at a whim, maybe be like, I'm not interested in you guys anymore. And so I left that situation thinking there's got to be a better way. We've got like all these fans, and we've got these people in the middle making decisions that, ultimately could decide that we don't have access to those fans anymore. Especially, this is around 2000 in the state of the industry at that time. Direct to fan still didn't exist, or it's just a burgeoning idea with, CD Baby was formed in 1998. But I left and I ended up in the Northwest where CD Baby's based. And I thought I was kind of done with music because I was still licking my wounds from the major label days, and started going through a very, big creative process, and just wrote tons of music and ended up starting a band. And I'm like, I want to do this different. And that's when I came across CD Baby. So I started using CD Baby like in 2003 and have been releasing music through it independently ever since. And then like 2006, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to get a job there because that's here in town. I'm here, they're here. Let's just make it happen. And so yeah, I've been working here for almost 13 years.
Wow,
and
cool.
Still, the band Small Town Poets, we've still been making a lot of records as well and doing it independently. And we had a new album come out a few months back. And so for me, it's, I love being here because I love the work we do and getting to help artists. But, I'm in the same boat as our artists. I'm out there trying to make things happen, trying different things. Some things are working, some things aren't. And so that's what we, Chris, that's co-hosts the DIY Musician podcast with me. That's a lot of what we talk about on that podcast, just our experiences and what we've learned and trying to pass those learnings along to the community.
Yeah, for sure. And we were just cranking some Small Town Poets, the latest album, right before we talked to you. So,
all right, perfect.
And that made me think of this. How do you manage your music career with your CD Baby career?
Well, the good thing is they kind of go hand in hand together, where at least they fit. But it's been a stressful season, finishing this album and promoting it. And I'm actually leaving Thursday night, taking a red eye out of Portland to go do some shows with the band in Atlanta and Nashville. And they were up here a couple weeks ago and took a week off to do shows around the Northwest. So yeah, don't sleep much. That's for sure. I don't watch TV. I have no idea what people watch on TV. I binge things here and there, but yeah, I just have to prioritize. At the end of the day, do I want to have make strides forward with my music, or do I want to play video games? The answer is I'd rather make strides with my music. So
yeah,
I try not to waste as much time as possible.
So how do you stay creative and inspired as a musician?
Well, I mean, I think the one thing is it goes through phases, and with the creative people, I think that's something that over time you learn, and you just learn to be okay with, in the sense that there'll be times when everything feels dried up, not a lot of creativity. And you might think, man, if I've written my last song, is it ever going to happen again? And then there's seasons where you're just cranking things out right and left. So I think you kind of figure out those patterns in your life and kind of assess why things may have felt extra creative and inspired at certain times. And I think, I've been going through a season lately of just listening to a ton of music. And to me, I've been listening to a lot of music I would normally listen to. And I think that helps inspire, and just, I've been listening to a lot of old stuff and some new bands, and just really diving into a season of listening to great music, which ultimately inspires me a lot. I normally listen to a ton of podcasts. I'm a podcast junkie,
same.
doing a podcast myself. And so I can go, I can binge podcasts to infinity, but I haven't been listening to as many podcasts, just in order to make more space for listening. And, it's kind of that season where we've come off the creation of this latest album for Small Town Poets and been in the heavy promotion phase. And now I'm trying to get myself geared back up to writing more music, both for Small Town Poets and for other projects. And so diving in and listening to music and playing with other folks is a lot of times how the inspiration starts coming back, and finding that place again.
I definitely find that listening to different things opens your mind up. It kind of gives you different, because you notice all your favorite artists, they all do it a different way. It always sounds great. There's something great about it, obviously, but it's not necessarily done in the same way. So as a writer, you can try and channel that from other artists and write in a different way, that you see. And then that could make, along with your style, that could make a totally new style or, song, obviously. But
yeah,
I love that.
Yeah. So sometimes it's a piece of gear. You got to just go buy a new pedal,
right? Yeah.
Or a guitar.
Very true.
Yeah. It comes from, I find that if I pick up a guitar, depending on which guitar it is, I'll write different things on it,
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
paint with different palettes. You pick up the Les Paul, you write something different than when you pick up the Strat.
And also like extremes, like acoustic versus, like a 12 string or something, anything like that.
That's a good point. Or alternate tunings, stuff like that.
Yeah.
We've heard a lot of answers to that question, and I feel like yours resonates the most with me because I also go through those phases of, writing a whole album in 2 days and then not writing anything for 6 months. It's like, so you got to kind of, something that made me think of was drill down to why those 2 days were so inspired. Exactly. And then you can kind of synthesize it from there.
Yep.
So I wanted to ask you also, you've been in Small Town Poets forever. So what are some tips you have for keeping a band together for so many years? I mean, bands are so volatile by nature.
Yeah. Well, you know what? The interesting thing is with that band, we just click really well together, both musically and personality wise, in the sense that we have never, I can't even remember a time when there was like a big band argument or something. Sure, there's been times when we've gotten irritated with each other, but after I got out on the road and, we were touring full time and playing with a lot of other bands, and both on our tours and just at festivals where you encounter a lot of different bands. And I was amazed at how many people would say that they just spend all their time on the bus fighting. I'm like, really? That sounds miserable. So we were, the personality fit was just really just feels more like family, like we're a bunch of brothers, maybe even better than brothers, because some people may fight with their brothers, but it just fits really well. And then musically, it's just one of those things where, and it's something that, it was more looking back after a few albums. And actually, when some of us started, doing some projects with other people, where you realize that there's just something about the five of us together making music that's better than any one of us as individuals or a smaller grouping of us, that the five of us just play together in a certain way that just feels right and works. And so it's tough because I've been trying to figure out what it is, just out of my own curiosity, because I've been in bands that there was one here in Portland I was in called Hello Morning. I love the music we made. Very different band. I loved the music, but the band, it was just like personality clashes, and just it did not feel that different feeling. Felt like there was still just this guarded nature between some of the members of, like, we couldn't quite be 100% comfortable in ourselves. I don't know. It's weird. So it's just, there's these, when you're in a band where you just feel like, hey, this is really working personality wise, and the music we're making, you got to hold on to that, because that's a rarity.
Yeah, I think it's a comfortability thing. I think really ultimately, because you play better when you're comfortable. If you're generally happier when you're comfortable. So just the music comes out easier, I think.
Yeah. And for us, it's something that over time we've gotten more and more open and honest with each other. Like if, when we were recording our first album, if someone said, I really don't like that guitar part, I'd probably have my feelings hurt a little bit. I'd still deal, but have my feelings hurt a little bit. But now the process feels so collaborative that we all trust each other's strengths and know each other, have serious talents they bring to the table. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that, hey, you're the bass player, you just play bass, your ideas don't go beyond bass, or you're the drummer. It's not like that at all. It's like, I really hear this like part like this, and be like, oh yeah, let me try, and let me see if I can make that happen, knowing that we also trust each other in the sense that if it sucks, we'll be honest about it. You know what? That didn't work. We tried, it didn't work. Yeah. And I think that just ultimately makes the end product better, because if you're in a band where nobody can speak up and say their piece about why they don't like something, you're not making very good music, or at least you're going to stifle the ability to grow and make better music.
Or and alienate that person, because if they're not, letting you know how they feel about the music, then it's probably not going exactly the way they want, and they don't feel as attached to it. That kind of thing. Yeah.
One day they show up and they quit, and you're like, what happened?
Right.
Like,
yeah. Exactly. Earlier you mentioned the heyday of people moving to LA, and that was kind of the place to make it. And then we know we have Nashville and New York. And then came the internet. So now, do you notice any correlation between geography and success as a musician?
I mean, it's still a little bit, but not necessarily. I mean, it's interesting here at CD Baby. We have so much music being distributed from all over the world, and we'll see people having serious success and find out they're in the middle of nowhere. I think really the idea of someone being in New York or LA or Nashville or a music town or a big city, yeah, you're going to have a concentration of artists and a community of people that are trying to make it. So there's chances that, there might be some learnings or advantages by relationship. There's definitely no advantage by access to the market, but there might be some relationships that are easier to build in a bigger city. But ultimately, we see people having success all over the place. The music business is still very much a relationship business. And, you need to build relationships, whether it's online or in your city, wherever you live. And if you're in a city like New York, LA, or Atlanta, or Nashville, or Dallas, those cities are just going to have larger communities, larger venues, more potential people coming to a show. And so it's just, that doesn't mean that that's going to increase your chances of success. If you're good communicating online and write great music and have the ability to connect with people, you can make it happen anywhere.
Yeah. So I want to kind of shift into the business and marketing side of things for a minute. What's the biggest mistake you see young musicians making nowadays?
Biggest mistake? Well, I think I think a lot of people look at the music they're creating in a short-sighted way. Like a lot of times for someone that's starting out, we see a couple of things happen. One, they'll create an EP or an album or a couple of songs and they'll put it out and then they'll get better. They'll start getting access maybe to more money to open use a better studio, or they've just learned, they've experienced other things, they've gotten better in their craft. And so the first thing is they want to go back and redo that album or those songs, that EP they've already released. And I've seen it happen over and over again where they just basically stop all forward progress and they're like, I got to just take another year and redo this whole thing. I'm like, no, it's done. It's out there. Go write more songs. And that doesn't mean that those songs might not deserve maybe to be a part of another album with a better recording. I'm not saying that at all, but I see it where it's just like it becomes this stumbling block where they're just refusing to go forward because they're convinced that those first couple songs were so good and that they have to keep trying to make them better. So never understanding when you're done and when it's out and need to move on, because as an artist, the best thing is to keep creating. If you want to have a successful long-term career, you're going to need to be able to write lots of great songs, and you're going to need to build a catalog. And understanding that that's going to take time. It's a long journey. Sure, you might write your debut album might be a hit. You might have some hit songs, but at the same time, I mean, that's kind of the situation we were in with Small Town Poets. But at the same time, it's like that wave ends and you got to write more. Otherwise it's over. And you really want to get yourself in a pattern of, I'm creating, I put that out, and now it's time to create something new. And again, that doesn't mean you never do remixes or you have the ability to give that song the life it really deserved. It's just thinking more intentionally and strategic about it, as opposed to just getting stuck there. I've talked to so many artists. Yeah, I've talked to so many artists where that's the case. That just like, oh, well, we did this EP and it just didn't sound as good as we hoped, so we're going to go back and redo it. And I'm like, you're going to be in the same place after you redo it. It's not going to be as good as you hoped.
Right.
And you still have that same EP, and then you haven't done anything new. That's all right. So that's one of the big things I see people starting out with, just not writing and recording and getting as much out there as possible to really start building that catalog.
So going back to creativity, how can we as musicians apply creativity to our marketing and our business efforts? I mean, creativity isn't just about music, and about art. It needs to kind of permeate everything.
Well, the one thing I'd say is that most people, a lot of artists, surprisingly, when they approach marketing and promoting their record, they go from this big creative phase of making the music, and then they get extremely uncreative, if uncreative is a word. That when they approach marketing, they're just like, just go buy it. Or they just start telling people, buy my music, or go stream my music, or add my music to your playlist. And they approach the market with zero creativity. And part of it is because they're spent, you come out of the album creation phase, and, even myself, knowing a lot of marketing, because that's my day job at CD Baby, I still get, fried and fizzled out when the album is finished, and you're just like, it's a lot of emotional energy that you now have to switch towards getting people to care about what you've done. So I think what's important is to take a break, as far as that's why I think it's good to have time to set up a release where you finish the album, and then it's like, okay, now I have time to let transition and have time to be creative with the promotion of it. And a lot of it is just tying your story into the album, thinking about the bigger story. It's instead of looking at it as an e-commerce transaction or just a transaction that you're trying to get somebody to make, whether it be to stream it or buy it or whatever. But the idea of how do I tell a compelling story around what just happened? If I was writing a movie about the creation of this album and why people should care and all the themes and things happening to me along the way, and that movie probably wouldn't have a scene where it just says go buy music, but that's how we approach the market. But when you start unfolding, where are the themes or the interesting connection points? A lot of times artists were scared to bring our music career into our real life, in the sense that, I don't want people to know that I'm really during the day, I'm a teacher, or I'm an auto mechanic, or I work at this law firm. I want people to just think I'm this rock star. And it's like a lot of those other storylines in your life are amazing connection points when you're just getting off the ground. And local press loves it. When you as an artist start making those connections. Hey, this person's a lawyer by day, but at night they're just pounding the pavement, writing and recording and playing gigs. And that's intriguing to a lot of people. Right. So I think it's you got to do a lot of soul searching. We did a whole podcast about this. I think we called it, I forget what the title of the episode is. It's about a year and a half old, but it was about artist branding, but it really just kind of pulls out those themes. It was a workshop that we did where it helps an artist pull those themes out of their life to build compelling stories that intrigue people. The other thing is, I would say, just reading some basic marketing books. There's a good one. I'm trying to see if I can't quite see my desk from here. It's called Why Ideas Spread. I forget the author. And that book is a worthy read in the sense that helps you just reorient your brain and some of the messaging that you're sending out.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Because a lot of times, we're uncreative with email subject lines, right, the content of email, the content of social posts. And I think that one really helps, just some concepts. It's not use this email subject line. It's not that kind of tactical marketing book at all. It's more of oh yeah, when I approach people and say these kind of things, stuff works. When I approach people and I'm very transactional, they don't work. Right. And
there are certain methods that definitely work better than other, more tactful, more friendly, whatever they may be. There's definitely better ways to go about asking or,
Yeah. The one thing that I've done in the recent months that I point to a lot on the podcast I talk about is that we have this marketing platform called show.co. It's free for anybody who uses CD Baby for distribution. It has some very powerful tools in it, but it has a function where you can, you trying to get people to follow you on Spotify, and it helps build your Spotify following. And so a lot of artists will try and use that and be like, follow me on Spotify. And that's all they'll say. Or, because it allows you to gate some content. So people take that action, they get access to it. Or, but the one I did that was really successful was, I did Hear the Song That Got Us Kicked Off the Stage. And you had to follow us on Spotify to get access to it. And so it's just the idea of like taking a piece of content that I already had and putting a story around it. So now people want to know what the story is. And instead of it feeling like I'm just sending marketing messaging to them, it feels like they're getting access to more of the story and it's intriguing. And and it kind of they want to scratch the itch. They're like, oh man, what is it? It's like, the question has to be answered. Like they're going to sit there and go, whoa, what happened? And so I think a lot of those ideas is you can get really creative with how you approach people. And a lot of times we just don't. So it's really, it's just taking some assessment of where you're at as an artist. What are some pieces of the puzzle that you have that you can leverage in order to get people interested in what you're doing?
So aside from that example you just gave, what are some of the most creative business and marketing ideas you've had for some of your past bands?
Let me see.
Or, of course, your current band.
Well, honestly, the thing that really broke Small Town Poets when we were having all that success, we were on a major label, but it wasn't the marketing machine at the label that was really breaking us. Our manager, just in every city, when we were on tour, our tour for us was not vacation. It was not go hang out in a town all day, sightseeing until you do the show at night. We were doing on-air interviews from morning till night. We were stopping by any place that they had music, or, like we'd go to college student centers and just play acoustic. We'd go to stores. We were going everywhere. And really we were playing music for people in that town in unexpected places, making real personal connections with us as people and us and the music. And it was incredibly powerful. And a lot of times, we'd be on there playing on a radio station that doesn't even play our format, wouldn't play our track normally. But because, once you get outside of major markets, you'd be surprised how accessible people are, and will allow you, access to, get your message out there, especially in small towns. Like if you're in a small town, like touring and you're playing some small towns, call up every radio station and ask them if you can come play a song on the air. You'll hear yes more than you will no. We did a lot of that stuff, and it just really worked. And stuff that even I think still works today. I mean, I talk to a lot of bands and they're on tour, and ask them how they spend their time during the day. And they're like, well, we got up at 1, then we went inside, saw some sites. We saw some sites, did sound check, played the show, and then left. And I'm just wondering why we're not getting more traction in that market. I'm like, you're not doing anything. It's not vacation. Yeah. It should feel like work, because it is work.
Yep.
Yeah, I heard a quote recently, and I forget who said it, but get up early and work all day. That's the secret to success.
Yeah, I mean that's what we did. So those opportunities, we would go play for at a local music store. And now suddenly that person who's pushing music to customers all day long, has had a connection with us and is recommending us. And times have changed a little bit since then, but we still do this all the time. We were in Nashville when the album came out, and we crisscrossed town playing acoustic sets at various press outlets and radio stations, and just making a personal connection with people and the music, especially people that have, some sort of influential role in what gets featured. So, I mean, that's one way that's really tangible that almost anyone can do. In fact, we were in Atlanta recently and ended up not working out because we didn't have the time frame didn't work. But there was a massive sports talk radio station that was going to have us play a song or two on the air. And I'm like, I don't know if these people would even care, but
get up there, yeah.
But their reach is massive. So it's like, it doesn't even have to be a music outlet sometimes that
everybody loves
will
music.
Go for it. So,
right.
And outside of that, I think, if you're not on tour, there's lots of ways to get creative online. I think there's so many people that are just great on Instagram or YouTube and just, you really get a sense for who they are. They're good in front of a camera. If you're sheepish in front of a camera, spend time at home getting comfortable in front of a camera, because if you're comfortable in front of a camera and can play cover songs, can talk to the cameras, if you're talking to your fans, there's a lot of opportunity to build audiences without ever leaving your house.
Yeah, definitely. We see it all the time. So musicians and artists are typically notoriously bad at the business side of things. Why is it important for young musicians to understand this marketing and business early? And kind of a two-part question: how can they do that?
Well, I think it's important because if you don't understand what you're getting into, you can waste a lot of time, energy, money, and then, in some instances, get yourself into maybe contractual situations where you're not too happy later on when you realize what that contract really meant, or the agreements that you've entered into with someone. I hear that a lot with people on the recording front. In fact, I was talking to an artist recently where they were saying that they're frustrated with the person producing their album and going slow and kind of not going the direction they wanted. And I said, well, just get all the files and take it somewhere else. And they said that the guy wouldn't do that. And she was asking if that was normal, that you would just use your own hard drive and that the files would be yours. I'm like, yes, it's your music. It's your, you're just paying them for their time. That's your, those are your projects, your files, your songs. And so I think that's one place where a lot of people encounter situations where someone's not giving them the best information. And for somebody that just doesn't know, it hasn't encountered those things before, you can, people can sometimes take advantage of you.
Yeah.
So it's important that I've got guys in my band. We've been around for 20 years. We've had some number one songs. We've sold a lot of records, and I've got guys in my band that still have no clue.
Yeah.
So I assume you kind of handle all that.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's like, that's just where they're at. They're not there to become music business experts. I don't think you have to be, but it's good to know the basics of how things work, so you can, at minimum, be efficient with how you do things and not waste time, energy, and money just barking up the wrong tree. But at the same time, it does get pretty complex with various rights and all that kind of stuff. And so, you want to make sure that you're trying to do your best to understand and educate yourself. And if you don't know, that you have good resources to look to that will help you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's hilarious, because that's actually my next question, almost word for word. What are, you mentioned why ideas spread, but what are some other good learning resources musicians can use to improve that business skill and that marketing skill?
Well, we have an amazing blog at CD Baby that just has an enormous amount of information on all sorts of topics. And it's a DIY musician blog. That is a great resource. We also have our podcast, the DIY Musician Podcast, where we discuss a lot of these topics pretty thoroughly. Trying to think of some other books. I'm not totally up to date on the latest music business books as far as what's out there, and I'd recommend. There's a lot of people the reason why I'm not too big on like music business books is a lot of people still write it like from the major label perspective.
Yeah.
Like here's how you get signed. And I just don't think that's very helpful. And I think it sort of positions artists, gives them a frame of reference that isn't the greatest, because really, in this modern business climate, if you're an artist, you better be doing things to make things happen yourself first. Because if there is the opportunity to engage at a label level, they're going to expect that you've done a lot on your own. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And not only will they expect it, but you should want that you've done a lot on your own, because that gives you leverage to a better deal than just, expecting someone to come in and take care of all your business and make you lots of money. That's typically not how it goes.
Our favorite book that we love and recommend on the show all the time is Ari Hurston's How to Make It in the New Music Business. Yeah. And that's amazing for a lot of reasons, but mostly because exactly what you just said. It's written from the perspective of an independent artist that almost argues that you should not go after a record label. So
yeah, you shouldn't. You should, in my opinion, I would agree with Ari. And I know Ari, I have just not read his book yet, that you should not be chasing a record deal. What you should be chasing are fans. You have access to fans directly on the internet and, in your town playing shows, and the record company, all they're going to do is take rights, make big promises, and probably not deliver.
Yeah.
Right.
So
you should be trying to get your own following started before you worry about getting a record label.
So it used to be all about getting the record label, but how has that evolved? I mean, what does being an independent musician mean today?
Well, back in the day that there was 3 big problems that an artist needed solved. Now there's only one. But back in the day it was one, when Small Town Poets, when we entered the market, it was still too expensive to record a quality professional record without the help of a record company. Our records on a label, the production costs were probably around $100,000. People are now making better sounding records in their home studio that probably cost them $1,000.
Yeah,
because it's just that cost structure has changed with the the advent of home recording, and the average person has better gear now than what the Beatles had when they made their records. So that's one problem that's no longer an issue for artists. The other one was distribution. When we were signed to a major label, you could not get your product in stores without major label distribution. They just weren't going to carry it. They didn't carry independent music, and there was no way to access those stores. And so that was the second problem. The third problem is marketing and promotion, which still exists today. Artists still typically need help marketing and promoting their music. But those other 2 problems have been solved. You can distribute your music worldwide with CD Baby, and it become available anywhere in the world where people enjoy music within a matter of days. So it's really, how do you get people to take notice after all that has happened? And so that's kind of a major need for artists. And, that's still a place where, depending on where you're at, hopefully you're building fans, you're writing great music, and those things just naturally start to build and build. And there might be a time when you need to bring in some help to help market and reach a broader audience. But if it's a label, at that point, you would have leverage. If it's not a label, it might be just some, marketing support, which there is that kind of thing now. But ultimately, you want to own your creative output. You want to own the direction of your career. And we've actually been seeing a lot of artists that coming off major labels, coming to CD Baby and working with us instead. And part of it is that the creative freedom that they get to just release music when they want to. A lot of the patterns we've seen of how artists release music over the history of the music business have been really driven by record companies, not the artists. The artists want to get more music out. The record companies want to manage each thing as a specific product and have a product life cycle. And so it's just interesting to see how the things have shifted and the needs that artists have now compared to, what it was in the past.
So 2 of those 3 have been solved. Do you see the third being solved anytime in the near future?
We're working on a few things that I'm very excited about that you'll be hearing about in 2019 that I think go toward that end. It's always going to be an issue. I mean, that piece is never going to be like, okay, 100% solved.
Right. Just upload here and done.
and the whole world will know who you are. That's just never going to happen.
Right.
But we are working on some tools that I think are going to be pretty game changing for the independent artist community, the artist community as a whole that we'll be rolling out in 2019. I'm very excited about them. That will help people target specific audiences and get their music in front of people that are much more likely to engage with it.
Yeah. And obviously you can't say too much at this time, but is that something that'll be available for CD Baby customers exclusively or anyone?
It'll be available to anyone.
Okay, cool.
But CD Baby customers will probably hear about it first.
Okay, got it. That leads perfectly into my next question, which is, and what you just said is an example of this, but what does CD Baby offer musicians that some of the competitors may not?
Well, with CD Baby, you're going to get complete music monetization. So yes, we distribute your music worldwide. And, we get it to all the places you want to be. We do deeper monetization like YouTube monetization. We're doing publishing administration, which really helps you collect all those additional royalties that are being generated. And those have really just opened up to independent artists in the last few years and are becoming more of a critical piece. For every $5 you make from streaming, there's an additional $1 of publishing revenue that is yours, but you have to have a publishing administrator to capture that revenue. So we're doing a lot of work there and collecting royalties all over the world for independent artists. We've actually been ramping up our sync licensing efforts. We've been getting a lot of placements for our catalog in film and TV. In fact, the last couple of weeks, there's been quite a few placements coming through on TV shows. Apparently we had a couple on that TV show, Young Sheldon, and I heard there was 2 more today, but I don't know what show it was. So we've been ramping up our efforts there, and, you just have the power of, the company that, CD Baby, the size that we are, we get, preferable treatment from the music services, and we're always looking for ways to help artists. And the big thing is we don't mess around with your money. We pay weekly. There's a lot of services out there that it looks like, oh, look at this new service that just popped up. And you read the fine print, they might pay you once every 6 months if they ever pay you at all. A lot of these services pop up and they're like, oh, distribution's easy. You just push some files. That's the easy part. Getting these, royalty statements with millions and millions of lines of data, crunching the numbers and getting you your money is the hard part. And we do that really well and do it every week. So that's one of the things, and we're not going to go anywhere. And I like the model that we have. We take a 9% back end, but you know what? I've been around for a while, and to me, it is the most conducive to the artist that is really creating for the long term, because we've seen so many artists, they put up music and maybe for the first year, nothing happens. But then suddenly a track gets added to a playlist and suddenly it's streaming like crazy. And we've seen so many artists, they're like, I've had this album up for a year or two. This company's going to charge me an annual fee. I'm just going to pull all the old stuff down. And I think that is the exact opposite way to approach your music career. You want to build a catalog that generates revenue over time. So when you make new fans off the latest album, they go back and engage with all the back catalog and drive even more revenue And so the way our model works, I think it's the most conducive for artists to just build for success for the long haul.
And one thing you guys offer that I love, and I don't know exactly, but is possibly unique in the distributor world, is you guys have the DIY Musician Podcast. How did that get started?
Absolutely. I started it back in 2007.
Wow, you were on the early end.
Yes. I was telling somebody recently, I've been through 2 phases of people saying podcasting is dead.
Really?
And now it's bigger than it has ever been.
Oh yeah.
It was when I first started working at CD Baby, I was already a podcast junkie. Like the discovering podcast was, one of the greatest things ever, where I'm like, there's conversations I can tap into that are outside just the mainstream noise, where I can get into communities of people talking about stuff I want to know about. And so I was just a podcast junkie. And then my job at the time when I first started CD Baby was just talking to artists on the phone all day, helping them get their music out there. And they would ask questions and I'd be like, man, I wish I could just spend an hour with you talking about this and giving you advice. Or I wish this conversation we just had, where you told me something cool that was working for you, and I basically, asked the artist to tell me every little detail so I understood how they were having success from that thing. I'm like, man, I wish I had recorded that and could play it for other artists. And so I got the okay to start the DIY Musician Podcast for CD Baby. And we've got 200, and I just posted our 223rd episode today.
That's awesome.
Still going strong. And we've spun that off into, we have the DIY Musician Conference now, which is become a whole animal of its own. And it all just started from, I just wanted to have conversations with artists. I wanted to learn from the artist community and the business community, and I wanted to have those conversations and make them available for everybody. And it's been going since.
Yeah, we're a little behind you. You're episode 43. So we'll catch up one day.
Yeah, I mean, you've already outlasted most podcasts.
There you go.
We're for the long haul.
I always crack up when people say, "Hey, do you have any advice to starting a podcast?" And usually what they want is help on the technical side. And how do I post it? I'm like, forget all that. Your biggest problem is you need to go write down what your first 10, 20 episodes are going to be, because so many people say they're going to start a podcast.
Yeah, 3 episodes and they're done.
Yeah, they're done. Yes.
They didn't realize this is a weekly
the technical
thing.
part's not the hard part. It's coming up with content.
Yeah.
That's the hard part.
Oh yeah, exactly. The last question I want to ask you is, what is the single biggest piece of advice you could give to up and coming artists? No pressure.
The single piece of advice,
or several, however you want to answer it.
The biggest one I would say is just to keep creating, just keep writing, recording, and getting better. In my opinion, the music career is a lifelong pursuit that builds over time. And you've got to, if you're just looking for something to hit in the next year, and if it doesn't happen, you're done, then chances are you probably weren't cut out for it in the first place. It's just something that, life's full of twists and turns. And with music, it's like you just got to keep building relationships, keep writing and recording and getting better. And it's the thing that always keeps me coming back is like doors will open at unexpected times in unexpected places. And it's a matter about, like I said, being there, ready, willing, and able, and to walk through that door of opportunity, and just to, surround yourself with people that are better than you and also can give you wise counsel, because there's a lot of times the voices of people around you just give you bad advice and make it hard, especially in the realm of the creative world. It's like, when I went off to college, I had an uncle tell me that you're never going to make any money from music. And it's like,
I think we've all heard that.
I've told, and the thing was, it's like, that's not why I picked up a guitar. I didn't start playing guitar because I thought I'd be rich. It's because I have to create. I have to do this. And
that's the thing that I heard that resonated with me as well was I don't do music because of any other reason than I just have to do it. There's no other thing I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's not for money or glory or whatever. It's just because that's what I'm doing. So.
And making money and a full-time living from it is a worthy pursuit. But, if you're just looking to make money, there's a lot better or a lot easier ways to do that. Go be a banker, because that's. But then, see, I don't know if bankers have as many good stories as I have from being on the road. So.
Yeah. So I got a good one. I just watched the recent. It was an old Dave Chappelle interview, and he said that when he decided he was going to be a stand-up comedian, he was the first one in his family to not go to college. So his dad had talked to him. He graduated high school, and he told him he wasn't going to college. He said, "I don't want to be I don't want to go to college or whatever." So he's the first one in his family to not go to college. So his dad talks to him, and he goes, "Listen, son, being an artist is a tough life. It's a lonely life." And, a lot of people want to make it, and a lot of people don't make it. And he said, well, it depends on what your meaning of make it is. If you're a teacher and you're making it on living your life on a teacher salary, I'd say if I can do that, making a teacher salary and a comedian, being a comedian, then I'd say that's making. Hard, right? Yeah, that's not too out of the realm.
Yeah, so, people think you have to be Lady Gaga or nothing, and there's definitely such a huge middle ground.
There's such a happy spot where you're happy doing what you're doing and you're making a good living and doing what you want to do.
Absolutely.
So. Yeah.
That's the most important thing, I think, is knowing that there is a middle ground.
Exactly.
Oh, absolutely. And it's, for some reason with the arts, people expect that you're supposed to start. It'd be like me starting it here at CD Baby being the CEO. I didn't start that high. I worked my way up.
Yeah, exactly.
I paid my dues. And, even though on the outside it could appear like Small Town Poets, our first album sold well and performed well, but all of us had been paying our dues for years and years, especially the other guys in the band who they're all 5 years older than me. They'd been, scrounging around for a long time. And it's the people are quick to see the success and not see all the work and effort and perseverance that happened to get there. And that, sometimes you're just in that mode where you're like, it feels like a lot's going my way at this point, but I know that if I want it, I got to persevere. I got to keep working, and eventually things will happen.
Yeah. And just remember that one door opening can change everything. So.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, thanks so much, man. Where can we find you? And would you like to just go ahead and give the listeners any links or anything you want to share?
Yeah, check out cdbaby.com. That's where you can find out about music distribution and everything that we're doing. And, my band, Small Town Poets, we're just Small Town Poets on all the music platforms. Our website is smalltownpoets.tv. What else? The DIY Musician Podcast, you can check it out. It's available where you listen to, where you get podcasts. So
and I will say it's very, very worth the listen.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. And it's on, Apple Music, iTunes, Spotify. It's on all, Apple Music, their podcast section, I assume is just iTunes podcast section. But anyway, yeah, you can find it anywhere you listen to podcasts. And it's been a fun labor of love, to keep that thing going.
Awesome. Well, Kevin, thank you so much, man. And we look forward to talking to you soon.
Thanks, Kevin.
Absolutely. Take it easy. All right. See ya.
Thank you guys so much for listening. If you could take a second to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast, it really helps us to be more visible to more musicians.
And don't forget, you can support the show by clicking on the link on our website that'll take you to our Patreon page. There you'll have access to content that is unavailable to non-patrons.
Make sure you follow our socials by going to themusicianstalkshow.com/Facebook/Instagram or /YouTube to stay up to date on all the cool things we have going on here at the show. And lastly, email us with any questions, comments, concerns, or guest ideas at dallas@themusicianstalkshow.com. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you guys next time.